Hi, everybody. A huge thanks to Sue Perks for inviting my project to be part of Symbol 24. I'm speaking to you from my studio and home in the Hudson Valley, New York. Today, I'm presenting on the Climoji project. As you can see in the slide, it is a portmanteau of the words climate plus emoji. There are two sets of icons produced in 2017 and 2019, respectively. This slide is featuring the Climoji Disasters set. The project was conceived while I was on full-time faculty at the Interactive Telecommunications program at New York University, and it began as an output of the program's volunteer group called Sustainable ITP. I know that these icons are very tiny because they are emoji, but you will see a lot more of them during the presentation. This is the resilience set. We produced this 2 years later. I will read our mission statement, which is enshrined on our website, climoji.org. Popular culture has the capacity to connect audiences to difficult issues wordlessly, emotionally, and with humor, as grave as the issues may be. We believe that as climate change enters into common language, including recognizable forms like emoji, the environmental justice movement's issues of concern are reinforced. The Climoji are designed to distill some of the causes and effects of climate change into tiny, potent icons. As emoji, these conversational tools enter the digital social space where online and smartphone users might encounter them with the same regularity as smiley faces and high-heeled shoes. But before I get into the motivations and outcomes of the project, I'd like to offer a little background on myself and my collaborator. I'm a media artist. I focus on nature, culture, entanglements. If anyone wants to know more, here's my website. And by way of a couple of brief examples, here are 4 agitprop posters from an ongoing project called Dear Climate. It's produced in collaboration with Una Chaudhuri, a scholar of environmental humanities who focuses on theater history, performance studies, and dramatic literature. The website dearclimate.net hosts over 80 posters, free to download, and guided audio visualizations, as well as our archive of installations and interventions. I have a gallery practice. Much of my work is in the form of generative software that uses traditional animation techniques, and I do quite a bit of print work as well. My interests are in examining and in reimagining modern humans' relationship to the planetary, including geologic forces, species, and the myriad environmental quagmires that we have produced. I'm also a chronic icon maker going way back. This hospital poetry were some early mutations from 2002. And this is my collaborator on Climoji. Her name is Viniyata Pany. She wasn't able to co-present today, but I wanted to introduce her as well. She was a founding member of the ITP group, Sustainable ITP, and continues to be the co-producer of this project. She's an artist and experienced designer who creates actionable narratives in the form of sound art, interpretive spaces, and interactive installations. She currently works at Gallagher Design as a lead on concept, interaction design, and visitor experience for multiple platforms for museums and cultural institutions. Here's a quick timeline of the project. It was conceived in 2017, supported in part by a grant from NYU's Green Grants program, and then it continued on its own in 2019 with an additional second set of icons focused on resilience. Most recently, the project was on exhibition in a show called Give Me a Sign, which I'll talk about a little bit later. So, why emojis? Depending on how you think about emoji, these Climoji are not emoji, as they will never be part of the official Unicode emoji set. There are numerous reasons for this. The Unicode consortium shies away from what they consider political content. I hope you can see my fingers making quotes. And even if the consortium considered climate change a topic to consider, as they did with yoga, dumplings, and people wearing hijab somewhat recently, they would want only one icon to represent climate change. But climate change is many things. It's a hyperobject, a word coined by philosopher Timothy Morton in 2008. Hyperobjects of the Anthropocene, he writes, are objects like global warming or oil that are massively distributed in time and space relative to humans, and that have become newly visible to humans largely as a result of the very mathematics and statistics that helped to create these disasters. Morton goes on to invite us to think ecologically, which would require first smashing the aesthetic bubble that we call a world. If you're interested in the struggle for adoption into the Unicode system, listen to this podcast on 99% Invisible. Tech analysts estimate that over 6 billion emojis are sent each day, and that was in 2017. Unicode brings new emojis into its core library, but each edition is subject to scrutiny. Anyone can submit, but the consortium, who meets 4 times a year, must decide if the proposed emoji breaks new ground or is guaranteed to be extremely popular. Unicode's position is that an accepted emoji cannot be political, but this article on the neoliberal politics of emoji in Salon magazine points out that all official emoji, in fact, all emoji, or perhaps all images, are political. The author of this article writes that, quote, while anyone can join and vote on future Unicode symbol inclusion, full voting membership costs between $11,000 and $18,000 US. As a result, the Unicode Consortium's board is comprised largely of white men and a few white women. The Unicode Consortium isn't a democratic organ, and thus emoji are approved and produced via a top-down technocratic hierarchy. They are not by us, but they are for us. Their politics will never stray beyond what's acceptable to their members. This means that any feminism we read into emoji will be corporate feminism. Any identity politics we try to find will be corporate-sanctioned identity politics. A hijab-wearing emoji is acceptable to the companies that promote emoji because hijab-wearing emoji doesn't change their ability to sell us products. I'll eat my words the day I see a drone bomber, a picket sign, or any depiction of poverty in emoji form. The restrictive nature of Unicode's conservatism points sharply to the need for icons that can say other things. And these are not very controversial: eating a vegetarian diet on the right, growing food, or promoting green infrastructure. In the broader sense, of course, the Climoji are emoji. The dictionary defines emoji as a small digital image or icon used to express an idea or an emotion, as in the sentence, quote, emoji liven up your text messages with tiny smiley faces. Given the complexity of climate change, how do you break it down so it doesn't just become an overwhelming hyperobject? Viniyata and I turned to a couple of useful frameworks. One lens with which to consider this entangled mess, or what Doug Akoff would call a wicked mess, is to look at the work of systems thinker Donella Meadows, especially her use of the iceberg model. Since we had the luxury of making as many icons as we pleased, we thought about the ways in which climate change has been enacted on the planet, the causes, the behaviors, the structures, and the mental attitudes. We also turned to the work of George Lakoff and Mark Johnson, the book Metaphors We Live By, published in 1980. In their writing, they stress that a paramount aspect of human cognition is our chronic use of metaphor. Metaphor is a key tool for pattern recognition, modeling mental frameworks, and connecting the dots between this and that. Lakoff and Johnson write that because we reason in terms of metaphor, the metaphors we use determine a great deal about how we live our lives. When we started this project in 2017, this was a very handy phrase to hang on to. If up is considered good and down is thought of as bad, and these are linguistic artifacts of cultural beliefs, then they play out in geopolitical arenas. Think for a moment of the historical perceptions of the North and how Northern European empires exploited Southern lands and inhabitants, positioning them conveniently as lesser than or down there. And if you stay with me for a moment, I think these ideas play out in language, get taken up and naturalized. So how did we, for instance, how we started using the language of capital in everyday ways, such as, is it worth my time? And time is money. In their book, Philosophy in the Flesh, Lakoff and Johnson write that any truth must be in a, Lakoff and Johnson write that any truth must be in a humanly conceptualized and understandable form if it's to be a truth for us. If it's not a truth for us, how can we make sense of its being a truth at all? When we thought about the climate crisis, climate denial, and climate communication, we thought about the ways we keep it at a distance and out of our language. Language gives form, and we needed a new way to bring climate chaos into common parlance. What's so funny about climate change? Nothing. Really, nothing. But our invitation is humor. In 2012, I heard a dumb joke that goes like this. What's the world's shortest book of jokes? The Environmentalist Book of Jokes. Now, that has changed. We have dark comedies like the movie Don't Look Up, endless political satire, Louis C.K.'s wonderful If God Came Back shtick. But back in the day, in the dark ages of the late, let's say 1992, there was only George Carlin and his wonderful routine, The Planet is Fine. I'm going to just play a very small excerpt of it.
See, I'm not one of these people who's worried about everything. You got these people around you, the country's full of them now, people walking around all day long, worried about everything. Worried about the air, worried about the water, worried about the soil. Worried about pesticides, insecticides, food additives, carcinogens, worried about radon gas, worried about asbestos. Worried about saving endangered species. Let me tell you about endangered species, all right? Saving endangered species is just one more arrogant attempt by humans to control nature. It is arrogant meddling. It's what got us in trouble in the first place. Doesn't anybody understand that? Interfering with nature. Over 90%, way over 90% of all the species that have ever lived on this planet, are gone. Whoosh. They're extinct. We didn't kill them all. They just disappeared. That's what nature does. They disappear these days at the rate of 25 a day, regardless of our behavior, I mean. Irrespective of how we act on this planet, 25 species that were here today will be gone tomorrow. Let them go gracefully. Leave nature alone. Haven't we done enough? We're so self-important. So self-important. Everybody's going to save something now. Oh, save the trees, save the bees, save the whales, save those snails. And the greatest arrogance of all, save the planet. What? Are these fucking people?
Sorry about the bad language. I tried to cut it short. He concludes the 7-minute outline, this routine, by saying, the planet isn't going anywhere. We are. We're going away. Pack your stuff, folks. We're not going to leave much of a trace either. Maybe just a little styrofoam.
See, I'm not one of these.
Me and Zoom and talking to myself over here. So another part of our invitation is to give tools to climate activists that have the possibility of engaging first through laughter or quirk, not doomsday news bites. Systems thinker and educator Howard Silverman offered us these words. How does one grapple with the privileges, angers, and sorrows of a climate-changing life? With Climoji, the unspeakable is textable. Hijack the era's cartoonish vernacular to send playful messages that are provocative, disturbing, and disarming. Climoji are not about getting beyond the choir, they are about finding one's voice. Now, of course, I hope that they do get beyond the choir and that people can at least send these to more resistant relatives, let's say, and find a point of entry for conversation. We thought you might be interested in how we went about developing the project. So it started as a call that we put out to students and faculty at NYU. And within the university at ITP and with environmental studies, we developed a workshop format to identify legible key climate-related concepts and to easily visualize them. Our brainstorming sessions with students and professors at NYU were designed to collect different perspectives on climate change. Participants drew their ideas without any text on them on 3x3 Post-it notes, depicting climate change both generally and topically: water, waste, emissions, injustice, plastic. We had quite a big rubric that people could work within, and we had co-determined what that rubric was. Some of it was social, some of it was material, causal, and some of it was effects and outcomes. These collaborative brainstorming sessions were the foundation for Climoji. The icon development process took 3 months of back and forth with the illustrator, whom we had hired to do the actual emoji. In the fall of 2017, we had managed to make a sticker pack available for iOS and Android through the Google Play and App stores. We got a lot of press, including the Washington Post, Newsweek, and even the Weather Channel. The Huffington Post said that the Climoji were deceptively adorable, endlessly memorable, and that communications experts think these little icons could actually move the climate conversation to a broader audience, accelerating investment in and sweeping adoption of hardcore snap-forward solutions to fix global warming. End quote. Now that is a giant hope and a giant promise, and I certainly hope that no one holds me to being any kind of a communications expert. We got a lot of tweets and more people downloaded the stickers. So probably by the end, we stopped actually measuring 30,000, 35,000 downloads. And then it just became unmanageable. And we had some problems with this idea of not really being able to find to determine any feedback on the efficacy of the project. So we had to pay to be on the App Store, for instance, and so we let it go and tried to figure out what else to do with the project. As I said, it was very hard to produce any kinds of metrics about the project's uses without violating a user's privacy by tracking their data. So beyond a handful of screenshots that our friends sent us, we really have no idea. In 2023, we were featured prominently in the exhibition Give Me a Sign. It was up for a year at the Cooper Hewitt Smithsonian Design Museum in New York. And during that time, we held a workshop for 25 high school students at the museum on creating climate action posters and icons. That was based, the workshop was based on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. In conclusion, I don't know. I would love to hear what successes you all as co-presenters and audience participants what have you all found in the communication spaces in terms of bringing humor to difficult issues, other tactics to lighten or subvert these issues that are so resistant to engagement in a way, or so doomsday. Climate change is so onerous, it drags the room down. And we all have news fatigue from hardcore scientific information and journalism. So it's all so important, but easy to tune out or feel helpless, humorless, and so on. So before I conclude, I want to list the credits of the amazing people who worked on this project. The disaster icons were illustrated by Manuja Waldia, and the resilience set was illustrated by Anna Lynn. When we had the sticker packs in the stores, they were developed by Johan Diedrich and Denny George, and we continue to be so grateful to them for their spirit and their talent. And lastly, here is a brief FAQ on the project. Please use the icons. You can download 300 by 300 pixel images at climoji.org. These can be made into stickers on your phone. You can make the stickers yourself, and then you can use them in social media. There are online how-to instructions to make stickers. They're pretty easy to find if you Google that. We encourage you to reach out if you want higher res images for your billboard needs, and we just ask that you credit the project. So thank you so much for your time and your attention. I hope you have a great rest of these sessions, and I hope to be able to speak with you during the panel.